Celeste Moreau thought she had the perfect life. Roland Lancaster, her billionaire husband, had given her everything: wealth, status, security. But as she stared at the plane ticket in her trembling hands, the truth unraveled like a thread pulled from an expensive suit. Roland wasn't on a business trip. He was in Paris, wrapped in secrecy and lies, with a woman who wasn't her. What Celeste didn't know was that this wasn't just an affair. It was something far darker. And by the time she uncovered the truth, her life and the life of her unborn child would be hanging by a thread. Roland Devereaux had a life most people could only dream of. A billionaire with a flawless reputation, he was the kind of man others envied. Successful, powerful, and married to a beautiful wife, Celeste. Their love story was one that belonged in magazines, the picture-perfect couple gracing red carpets and charity events, admired by the world. Celeste, now 6 months pregnant, believed she had everything: a devoted husband, financial security, and the future of their growing family to look forward to. But perfection is often a fragile illusion. Celeste had always trusted Roland. He was a busy man, running a global empire, and long work hours were nothing new. His business trips were frequent, his schedule unpredictable, yet he always assured her that everything he did was for their future. Still, something had changed. In the past few months, his late-night meetings stretched later and later. He avoided looking at her for too long, his once affectionate touch growing mechanical. When she spoke to him, he seemed distracted, answering only in vague murmurs. At first, she dismissed it as stress. Perhaps the pressure of becoming a father was weighing on him. Maybe he was just overwhelmed with work. But the growing sense of unease refused to leave her. It was the way he pulled away when she tried to rest her head on his shoulder, the way he kept his phone on silent, always face down on the table, the way he would step out onto the balcony to take calls, lowering his voice whenever she walked. By one evening, alone in their sprawling estate, Celeste found herself wandering into Roland's private study. It wasn't a place she entered often. He preferred to keep it as his sanctuary, a space where he could focus. But something compelled her to go inside. Maybe she was looking for reassurance, proof that her suspicions were unfounded. Maybe she just needed to feel closer to him. The room was meticulously organized, every file, book, and document placed with precision. She hesitated for a moment before stepping toward the mahogany desk. Her fingers traced the cool surface, and then, as if drawn by an unseen force, she pulled open the top drawer. Inside was a neatly arranged stack of documents, but it was a small envelope that caught her eye. Slipping it out, she unfolded the contents, and her breath caught in her throat. 2 first-class tickets to Paris. A trip she had never heard about. A trip he had never mentioned. And the departure date was that very night. Her pulse quickened as she checked the details again, hoping she had made a mistake. But there was no denying it. Roland was leaving, and he wasn't going alone. The second ticket, identical to his, sent a wave of nausea rolling through her stomach. Her mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. Was it a business? Trip? But if so, why hadn't he told her? And why were there 2 tickets? Had he planned a surprise for her? No, he would have told her, or at least hinted at it. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't something innocent. Dread settled over her, heavy and suffocating. She placed the tickets back exactly as she had found them, making sure every corner aligned perfectly. She needed to act normal. If Roland realized she knew, he would cover his tracks. He was too smart, too careful. Confronting him now would accomplish nothing. A noise from the hallway made her freeze. She turned just as Roland appeared at the door, his sharp blue eyes scanning the room. "You're still awake?" His voice was casual, but there was something else in it. Something unreadable. She forced a smile, resting a hand on her stomach as if to steady herself. Just waiting for you." He nodded, stepping closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. But for the first time, his touch made her shiver. As Roland left the room, unaware of what she had discovered, Celeste knew one thing for certain. Her perfect life was about to shatter, and she was going to find out exactly why. Celeste sat in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. The discovery of the plane tickets had shattered any lingering doubts she had. Roland wasn't just distant, he was lying. The man she had loved, the man she had built a life with, was about to board a flight to Paris with someone else. But who? And why? The questions gnawed at her, refusing to let her rest. She needed answers. Confronting him now would be reckless. He was careful, methodical. If he knew she was suspicious, he would erase every trace of his deception before she could uncover the truth. No, she had to be smart. The next morning, Celeste forced herself to act normal. She smiled when Roland kissed her goodbye, pretending not to notice the way he avoided her gaze. She watched as he left for work, his movements as smooth and practiced as ever. To anyone else, he was just another devoted husband, a powerful businessman heading off for another busy day. But Celeste knew better now. As soon as he was gone, she called Eleanor Sinclair, her closest friend and the one person she trusted completely. Within an hour, Eleanor was at the house, her expression tight with concern as she listened to Celeste explain everything: the distance, the late nights, the hidden trip. When Celeste finally pulled out the photos of the plane tickets, Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line. "We need to find out who he's traveling with," Eleanor said firmly, "and we need to do it fast." With Eleanor's help, Celeste began digging. It started with Roland's travel records, something she had never thought to check before. What she found left her cold. This wasn't the first time he had flown to Paris. Over the past year, he had taken multiple trips, all under the guise of business. Each time, he had been gone for just a few days, never long enough to raise suspicion, but often enough that it was clearly intentional. Then came the financial records. Transactions traced to luxury hotels, five-star restaurants, and designer boutiques. The expenses were extravagant, but more importantly, they weren't tied to any business meetings. Roland had been spending money in Paris, but not on work. The final piece of the puzzle came from a private investigator Eleanor insisted on hiring. Within hours, Celeste received the first set of photographs. The images sent a jolt of nausea through her. Roland, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, walking hand in hand with a striking woman outside a high-end hotel in Paris. Her beauty was undeniable, tall, with dark hair and a striking elegance that demanded attention. The way she looked at Roland made Celeste's stomach twist. It wasn't casual, it wasn't professional, it was intimate. More photos followed. Dinner at an exclusive restaurant, their bodies angled toward each other. A lingering touch on her arm, a shared glance that spoke volumes. The woman's identity was confirmed quickly: Eleanor Moreau, a former model with connections to some of Europe's wealthiest men. She wasn't just a random mistress. She was someone who moved in powerful circles, someone who knew how to keep secrets. Celeste felt the weight of the betrayal settle deep in her chest. Her hands trembled as she stared at the images, the truth now undeniable. Roland wasn't just having an affair, he had built an entire secret life in another country. But what disturbed her the most wasn't just the affair itself. It was the feeling that there was more to this than infidelity. The secrecy, the multiple trips, the financial transactions that didn't add up. It felt calculated, like Roland wasn't just hiding an affair. He was hiding something bigger. Eleanor placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "What do you want to do?" Celeste exhaled, forcing herself to stay calm. She wasn't going to break down. She wasn't going to let Roland get away with this. She had spent years building a life with him, trusting him, carrying his child. He had thrown it all away, and she needed to know why. "I'm going to Paris," she said, her voice steady. "I need to see it for myself." Eleanor didn't hesitate. "Then I'm coming with you." Celeste didn't argue. She needed support, and Eleanor was the only person she trusted. By the end of the day, their flights were booked. As Celeste packed a small bag, she felt something shift inside her. She had been heartbroken before, but now she was something else. She was ready. Roland thought he could keep his secrets hidden, but he had underestimated her. And by the time she was done, he would regret it. Celeste felt her heart hammer against her ribs as the plane touched down in Paris. The city had always been a place she associated with romance, elegance, and beauty. Now, it was a place of betrayal. The sight of the twinkling city lights through the airplane window didn't fill her with excitement or awe. Instead, it was a cold reminder of why she was here: to uncover the truth. Eleanor had been by her side the entire flight, keeping her grounded when the weight of her discovery threatened to overwhelm her. There had been moments when Celeste considered turning back, convincing herself that she didn't need to see it with her own eyes. But deep down, she knew that if she didn't face this now, she would regret it forever. As soon as they landed, the private investigator they had hired, a discreet but efficient man named Jules, was waiting for them outside the airport. He wasted no time briefing them. Roland and Isla were staying in a penthouse suite at one of Paris's most exclusive hotels, a place reserved for the ultra-wealthy, where privacy was guaranteed and questions were never asked. From the back seat of the car, Celeste gripped her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. She stared at the hotel's location on the map, just a few miles away. Yet it felt like an entirely different world. The place where her husband was indulging in his secret life, where he was lying to her, betraying her, pretending to be someone else. When they arrived, Jules led them to a quiet spot across the street from the hotel. Through a high-powered lens, Celeste could see into the grand lobby. It didn't take long before she spotted Roland. He walked in, his posture relaxed, his confidence unmistakable. He had always carried himself like a man who owned everything around him, a man untouchable. But he wasn't alone. Isla was beside him. Her arm looped through his as they made their way toward the private elevators. Celeste's breath caught in her throat. The way he looked at her, the slight smirk, the effortless charm, was all too familiar. It was the same way he had looked at Celeste once, before their life had become a carefully constructed lie. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She couldn't afford to be weak now. She took rapid photos as they entered. The elevator together, vanishing from sight. Proof, more proof of his betrayal. But something still didn't add up. She could almost understand an affair, as devastating as it was. But why Paris? Why this secrecy? And why the briefcase he had been carrying? Jules turned to her, his face grim. "It's not just an affair," he said, as if reading her thoughts. "Your husband is meeting someone important tonight, someone powerful." Celeste's stomach tightened. "Who?" "We don't know yet. But he's not just here for Isla." Celeste felt an icy dread creep over her. It was one thing to confirm that Roland was unfaithful. It was another to realize that he was involved in something far more dangerous than a simple affair. She clenched her fists, determination setting in. "Then we follow him," she said. "We find out what he's really hiding." That night they waited. Hours passed as they watched the entrance of the hotel from their hidden vantage point. Then, just after midnight, Roland emerged. He wasn't with Isla. Instead, he was alone, his expression serious, his movements precise. He carried the same briefcase from earlier, holding it with a firm grip. A black luxury car pulled up to the curb. The driver stepped out, exchanged a few words with Roland, then opened the door. Roland hesitated for a moment, scanning the street as if checking for prying eyes. Celeste held her breath, terrified that somehow he could sense her watching. Then, he got in, and the car sped off into the Parisian night. Jules didn't hesitate. "We follow." The next few minutes were a blur of winding streets, shadowed alleys, and the distant hum of traffic. Celeste barely breathed as their car tailed Roland's, careful to keep a safe distance. After nearly half an hour, they arrived at an isolated building far removed from the elegance of central Paris. It was discreet, unmarked, but unmistakably important. Roland stepped out, still carrying the briefcase. A tall man in a dark suit greeted him at the entrance. No handshake, no friendly exchange, just a curt nod before Roland was led inside. Celeste's pulse pounded in her ears. This wasn't a romantic getaway. This wasn't about love. Her husband was involved in something far more sinister, and she was about to find out exactly what. Celeste gripped the edge of the car seat, her breath shallow as she watched Roland disappear into the dimly lit building. The air around them was thick with tension, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This wasn't just about an affair anymore. Something much bigger was unfolding before her eyes, something that had been hiding in the shadows all along. Jules kept his gaze fixed on the entrance. "We need to be careful. Whatever your husband is involved in, it's not small. That building isn't a hotel or a restaurant, it's a private meeting space used by people who don't want to be seen." Celeste swallowed hard. "Then we get inside." Jules hesitated, but Eleanor nodded firmly. "She's right. We came this far. We can't just sit here." With a quiet efficiency that made Celeste suspect he had done this before, Jules guided them around the back of the building. The structure was sleek and modern, yet deliberately unremarkable. No signs, no markings, just a fortress of secrecy tucked away from the prying eyes of the city. They found a service entrance, the door propped, slightly open. Jules motioned for them to stay quiet as they slipped inside, their footsteps careful against the polished marble floors. The interior was even more unnerving than the exterior. It wasn't an office or a conference space. The lighting was low, the walls lined with security cameras, and a faint hum of voices echoed from somewhere deeper inside. Celeste's heart pounded as they moved forward, staying close to the shadows. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to turn back, to run. But she forced herself to keep going. She had spent months ignoring the signs, dismissing the nagging doubts. Not anymore. They reached a corridor that branched off into several rooms, but Jules raised a hand, signaling them to stop. Up ahead, a heavy door stood slightly ajar. From inside, voices drifted out, one of them unmistakably Roland's, Celeste's. Entire body stiffened. She edged closer, careful not to make a sound, as she strained to listen. "The deal is finalized. The funds will be transferred by tomorrow morning." Roland's voice was cool, composed. The voice of a man in control. Another man responded, his tone clipped and authoritative. "And the documents?" "Encrypted and secure. You'll have full access once the transfer is confirmed." Celeste's stomach twisted. She had no idea what they were talking about, but it wasn't business in the traditional sense. There was something dangerous in the way they spoke, something secretive and deliberate. Then came a sound that made her blood run cold, the sharp click of a briefcase being unlocked. Carefully, Celeste angled herself just enough to see through the gap in the door. Inside, Roland stood at a long glass table, the briefcase open in front of him. Stacks of documents lay inside, alongside what looked like hard drives and thick envelopes filled with cash. Across from him sat a man she didn't recognize, tall, broad-shouldered, his features partially obscured by the dim lighting. But there was no mistaking the air of power he carried. This wasn't just a simple exchange. "Everything is here," Roland said. The other man nodded, sliding a folder toward him. "And this is what you asked for." Roland opened the folder, scanning the contents before exhaling in satisfaction. "Then we're done here." Celeste felt like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. She had come to Paris expecting to catch her husband in an affair. Instead, she had uncovered something much worse. Roland wasn't just lying to her. He was involved in something illegal, something carefully orchestrated and deeply buried beneath layers of deception. Jules placed a firm hand on her arm, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need to leave. Now!" Celeste knew he was right. They had seen enough. If they were caught, there was no telling what would happen. But as they turned to go, a voice from inside the room made her freeze. "The wife suspects something, doesn't she?" Celeste's blood turned to ice. Roland's response was almost casual. "She won't be a problem for long." A slow, chilling silence followed. Celeste's breath hitched, her vision blurring as the full weight of his words sank in. Her husband wasn't just betraying her, he was planning something far worse. Celeste felt the world tilt around her. Roland's words echoed in her ears, each syllable striking her like a physical blow. She had come to Paris to expose his affair, to catch him in his deception. But now she was standing in the shadows, hearing the man she once loved calmly discuss her as if she were an obstacle to be removed. Jules tightened his grip on her arm. His expression was unreadable, but his message was clear. They had to leave now. Eleanor, pale but steady, nodded in agreement. Moving quickly but silently, they retraced their steps through the dimly lit corridors, their bodies pressed against the cold walls to avoid being seen by the patrolling security. Every second felt agonizingly slow, each footstep a potential betrayal of their presence. By the time they reached the exit, Celeste's hands were shaking. The cold Parisian air hit her like a slap as they stepped outside. She could barely breathe, her mind racing with the implications of what she had just heard. Jules wasted no time ushering them into the car. "We're not safe here," he said. "He's careful. If he finds out you're in Paris, he'll act fast." Celeste's voice was barely a whisper. "He's planning something." Eleanor turned to her, worry etched into her features. "We have to go to the police." But Celeste shook her head. "No." The truth was, she didn't trust the authorities, not with a man like Roland. He was powerful, well-connected, and had always known how to manipulate the system to his advantage. A single phone call from him could make evidence disappear, turn accusations into misunderstandings, and turn her into the one who looked irrational. She needed to be smarter. Jules started the car, driving them away from the building, but Celeste barely noticed. Her mind was already working through the possibilities. If Roland was willing to get rid of her, it meant she was in his way. But why? What was in that briefcase that was worth more than his own wife and unborn child? Her hands clenched into fists. She needed proof, undeniable evidence that would expose not just his affair, but the entire operation he was involved in. Jules seemed to read her thoughts. "We can get inside his penthouse," he said. "Find out exactly what he's hiding." Celeste inhaled sharply. It was dangerous, reckless. But what other choice did she have? An hour later, they stood outside the luxurious hotel where Roland and Isla were staying. Jules had connections, and within minutes he had secured access to a key card. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent. Celeste could hear the pounding of her heart, the rush of blood in her ears. When the doors slid open, she braced herself for the worst. The suite was empty. Roland and Isla were gone, but the signs of their presence were everywhere. Celeste forced herself to focus. She moved quickly, searching through drawers, checking the desk, scanning the room for anything out of place. Then she saw it. A sleek black laptop, left open on the desk. She didn't hesitate. Sitting down, she navigated through the files, her fingers trembling as she clicked through encrypted folders. Then she found what she was looking for. Financial transactions, large sums of money transferred to offshore accounts, files detailing business deals with names that sent a shiver down her spine. Roland wasn't just cheating. He was laundering money, forging documents, and engaging in international fraud. And he had made sure to eliminate any loose ends, including her. She grabbed a USB drive from Jules, copying everything she could. The process felt agonizingly slow, every second a risk that Roland could walk through the door. But finally, it was done. The moment she pulled the drive from the laptop, a noise from the hallway sent a jolt of fear through her. Footsteps. Roland was back. Jules reacted instantly, pulling Celeste and Eleanor toward the balcony. They had no time to reach the door without being seen. The balcony overlooked the Paris skyline, beautiful and deadly. They were too high up to climb down, but Jules had anticipated this. He pulled a rope from his bag, something he had clearly prepared for. One by one they descended, the wind whipping against them. Celeste barely had time to process the adrenaline, her heart in her throat. Just as they reached the alley below, she heard the unmistakable sound of Roland's voice from the balcony above. By the time he saw them, they were already running. They didn't stop until they reached a secure location, where Jules immediately began transferring the files to multiple sources. Within hours, the information was sent to authorities, journalists, and legal teams that even Roland couldn't silence. The fallout was immediate. By morning, headlines exposed Roland's crimes. His accounts were frozen, his name splashed across every news outlet. Isla vanished, and Roland was arrested trying to flee the country. Celeste watched it all unfold, a strange numbness settling over her. She had loved him once, trusted him, and in return, he had tried to destroy her. As she placed a hand over her stomach, she knew one thing: she had won.